Hi, welcome back to the One in the Many. This is a conversation with Daniel Zavrel. Daniel, it is great to meet you, and thank you for joining me on my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Arshak.
So, I came across your work through a couple of email exchanges that we have with you, and I was fascinated. I don't think I understand fully exactly what you do since I haven't really invested my time in studying it in depth. But as both of us thought that that will be a good conversation to record for people and broaden it even uh, wider than exactly for what you're known in terms of conscious. Or how do you pronounce your company's name? Conscious?
Yeah, conscious. The English word for conscious with instead of an S with a Z in the end for the playful element. So it's becoming conscious. So the name is conscious indeed.
Right. So I definitely want to start from there, but then we thought that we may focus more on stress and um, uh, how we interpret stress, how we react to stress, how we manage stress, and so forth.
Sure.
So I know you probably have many video conversations out there telling um people where you started and how you started and all this stuff. So many people will know the autobiographical development of your career. But if you can just give like a couple of sentences to connect how you get to the idea of developing the conscious from a business background that you came in from.
Yeah. So I'm from the Netherlands, and I studied business economy on the Erasmus University in Rotterdam. But yeah, I was always fascinating about the human part of change. So my first job was with Accenture, which is still the largest consulting firm in the world. So I started with a real corporate background with the lease car and having this top job, go to St. Charles, USA, and get all this education and the best of the best, the brainwash from Accenture, and you got being picked up by a big limousine from the Chicago airport, and you went to the St. Charles facility, all these things. So yeah, I learned quite the corporate language and also about approaching a project, big projects in big companies. But it really didn't have my heart. Because as a young boy, I looked at the stars and really was fascinated much more by what's the meaning of life. What happens when we die? What literally happens? And is there alien life? So those philosophical questions I found much more interesting, and so at a young age I already became, skilled in meditation step by step. Later, I also became a yoga teacher, Iyengar yoga, which is a kind of athletic form of hatha yoga, and heart math, heart coherence. So besides my business economist part, I developed this complementary part. And then I ended up having my passion to bridge those two worlds, like corporate world with spirituality and with science. I think, and they can all meet each other effortlessly. And also in the conscious scan, which I use, which is a very advanced quantum physics-based body-mind scan, where we scan the whole body of, let's say, a CEO or a team member or elite top sport, or now also private people. So it's quite broad. And I also married, and together with my wife Andrea, we have 7 children.
Oh wow! Congratulations.
Thanks.
So well, that's a great story to end it with the 7 children. This is remarkable. I mean, I don't have any children, so I'm having difficulty perceiving that raising one child is difficult. What's left for 7 children? So
Yeah,
kudos
it's a
to you and
challenge.
your wife that uh, you have embarked on that remarkable journey. Um, so So obviously, you didn't find the right question, the right answers to the questions you posed in your transition from corporate um, to a more spiritual, more intellectual framed kind of pursuits. And then how does that relate to practical reality, to everyday life, um, to make the big corporate machinery work a little more intimately.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, like you, I'm painfully familiar with the big limousine and all the perks and everything that comes with a high stress job. Um, but that's not a consolation to the stress we develop in those kind of environments. And I would venture hypothesizing that one of the main elements of that is that there's no real intimacy. You are not intimate to the process. You're not intimate with another and their process to the work. So it becomes very mechanical, very calculative, just throwing numbers and metrics and not really appreciating the human development aspect of the relationship between man and world, man and his process and task and everything else. Everything is system guided and related. So once you went into exploring how to make the bridge, to make it work seamlessly, um, what are some of the first steps that you discovered that can help both worlds realize that when you are in a intimate situation, you need structure, and when you're in a structured situation, you need intimacy? Where did you find that relationship?
yeah. I think the central part is the heart, as most of us and also most of corporate people have not learned how to feel. On most, let's say, MBA studies, university programs, you only feed the brain, and especially the left brain. So, to be honest, most people, and I was also one of them, and that's why I can say it so easily, are left brain prisoners. When I left college, the university in Rotterdam, I was a left brain prisoner as well. I didn't know how to feel my body. I even went to a yoga class, and the yoga teacher, "Yeah, feel this and feel that," and I was really not aware what he was talking about. I was only living in my head. And so it took me a while to really get in touch with my body. And later, I also became a yoga teacher. Now I can feel, let's say, every cell and vein in my feet. But at that time, I could even not be aware of my feet, so let alone of my heart. So I think a lot of people have a dried up heart and are imprisoned in the left brain. And so they live in a reality where they only believe what they can see, and what they cannot see is, yeah, generally very difficult. But that's the whole part. I think the spiritual dimension is lacking so much. And I'm also hopeful on the other side that in big corporates like Accenture or PwC, they're introducing the spiritual layer more and more. Okay, they first translated with purpose and why, yeah, but that's already a big gain, let's say, with 20 years ago, where they just had to be up in this corporate environment. So now at least they're aligning the personal missions of their employees with their corporate mission, and also make sure that those people can express their purpose and their why more and more in these environments. So there is a transition going on. And also I train a lot of with mindfulness programs or heart coherence programs. I just did a 100-day Be Well Work Well program with PwC with the highest level, where I also do this conscious scan. So and they are scanned the whole body, the brain, the body. We can see where there is stress, what the causes are stress. We calculate nutrition, totally personalized, vitamins, minerals, microorganisms. And they were totally fascinated by that, because it's of course the left brain, because their body is being measured, but it's also the right brain and the heart, because also we can measure psycho-emotional patterns, even going back to the womb, what they call prenatal imprints. And then you have very deep conversations with these people, because one on one, most of them, surprisingly, are quite spiritually interested. It's more when they are in a group, they have to be the staff guy or woman, and talk more business-like. But also that's step by step changing. So it's changing quite rapidly. And yeah, I think my mission was as one of those, let's say, practical light workers, or how you want to call it, maybe a samurai for the corporate world, because we were just talking about the samurai and you practicing aikido. Yeah, so bringing this consciousness into the corporate world has been my passion and still is. But now also I move more to private people, and I also like that a lot. And I worked a lot with elite sports, like with, if, for example, in the Netherlands you have PSV, which is one of the top three top soccer or football clubs in the Netherlands. With them, we won 3 times in a row the Dutch title with this conscious scan method. Also, I
Wow.
scanned the players there. So, and it's all about becoming conscious about your thoughts, about your feelings, about your behaviors, and about the outcomes which you are pursuing. And you can change your thinking and your feeling, leading to other behavior and other outcomes. So everything is growing in consciousness. And so that's actually what my big passion is.
And it is that what you uh, interpret as the spiritual experience?
Yeah, I think the spiritual experience is to discover actually the inner silence more and more, so that we are so used to this turmoil and very busy mind, and so that going in, and then meeting step by step the more silent part in yourself. And like also with quantum physics, yeah, you have a molecule, you go to the atoms, in the atom you go to the electrons, you go to the quarks, to the neutron, and in the end you end up in a unified field, according to Einstein. And this unified field from science is exactly the same unified field as from consciousness. So in those two, science and spirituality become one. That's actually what Einstein said. Physics will turn into metaphysics. In the quantum dimension, there are totally different laws than in the Newtonian dimension, for example. And this is actually conscious, that you create consciously, what they call the observer effect, and that the observer influences that what he observes, and in that way co-create certain outcomes of certain, let's say, scientific researches. And that's very interesting that all these worlds more and more come together.
So, do you see the way we interpret and articulate what we think happens in the quantum world? Do you see that as part of the right brain that we're not accessing? And how does that relate to the left brain that needs constant invariance?
Yeah. So I think what everything what people call spiritual, which they cannot see and find very vague, generally is not understood complexity. Because for that, indeed, you also need the right brain, the intuitive part, the heart brain, and the belly brain. Actually, the whole brain we have. We also have this belly brain. We do have this heart brain, and the heart knows before the head knows. There has been so many interesting studies that the heart already reacts before the head becomes conscious on certain events. And so it's a very high form of intelligence, what they call heart intelligence. Now you have three different forms of intuition, for example. And so they appeal to the right brain, to the heart brain. And so actually being stick only in the left brain makes your world very small. And so expanding makes your choices broader. And by having more choices, also your happiness will grow, and because you make more conscious choices. And let's say also for how people eat, and you can eat from different levels of consciousness. When you eat very mechanical, you're hungry and you just take some potatoes with mayonnaise or fries with mayonnaise. But when you were in a more intellectual mood, you would think, okay, this mayonnaise too much may not be so good. And let's take more, for example, broccoli with this. And that's a more intellectual choice, and your energy will benefit from it longer. And so by making that conscious choice, your happiness will grow. So you can eat from even seven levels, also from ideological perspective, and let's say creating world peace. And this is for every matter, also in leadership. Yeah, personally, I think the quality of our leadership is really bad. I don't think we even have leaders. They are like very like let's look at the top leaders. The only thing they can do is make war, and that's such a primitive kind of consciousness. And having fights about oil and territory and domination and economic domination, that's really a primitive brain still operating. You cannot. So there are few good leaders which may act from the heart, which can connect to that quantum field and can manifest from much higher levels. And I think we need that very much.
So, can you give me a little more concrete example, kind of like elaborate on exactly what you mean by what distinguishes a good leader from everything that is available to us? And how does that idea of the heart intelligence manifest in the good leader?
Yeah, well, I think this is a personal opinion. When you dive a little bit more in the power structure on a planet, I did some studies about that, and I think everybody has to make up their own mind of it. Maybe they think it's total rubbish what Daniel's telling, but I really do think that there's a power structure which wants to keep the intelligence low and feeds itself with low vibrations like shame, guilt, fear. And that means that most of these leaders, which are trained by this same power structure, are not enlightened. Like, for example, really believing and develop in like what Tesla said, energy which is abundant, or money which could be abundant for everybody, or food. If there would be even 1,000th of a priority given to feeding the planet and having no hunger, all the weapons which are now used for Iran, for example, or Ukraine, Russia, just count only that amount divided by 1,000, and you can feed the whole world. It's that simple. It's one decision. Nobody can even make that simple decision. It can really pisses me off. And that's such unenlightened leadership. I don't even want to call it leadership. It's tortural guidance or something, or tortural power structure to keep everybody. Also, most people live in debt. That's by design. That's by design to keep us in this low frequency. So I think that people have to learn to wake up to their inner power. Don't give that power away to leaders or authority outside them. They must have the guts to speak out, and so that we can co-create a more enlightened world from the heart, and where we realize, yeah, okay, maybe I'm Russian, maybe you are Ukraine, but in the end we are one. We are both consciousness having a human experience, and if we can share things and be together, then we can be much happier together than with this territory kind of bullshit. And so I can mention like thousands. Health, the same. The whole health system has been hacked, for example, by the Rockefeller family. For 120 years ago, there was a beautiful health system, for example, in the US, where everything was herb based. It was a very difficult education to be a doctor in herbs at that time. But step by step, the Rockefellers were in oil, transitioned that to oil based. And they destroyed the universities, and until so far that even a doctor gets only 30 minutes about nutrition. Well, every person on this planet with one brain cell more, and let's say than an average animal, can understand the relationship between good food and health, and that the people who are in charge of our health don't even know one bit of it, and only are conscious about what the pharmacy says they would describe to treat certain symptoms. That's another example of this. I call it torture or guidance. It's not leadership. They None of those people deserve the term leader.
So, um, I I disagree with most of it, but I don't really want to go into it. Um, as it's not my purpose in examining the work, I think there's a missing connection between the function of consciousness and the manifestation in its social order in your interpretation, which when we have more time we can explore, because it's a very very complicated and a very complicated process, and it requires not only historical context, but it also requires the understanding of the relationship of the fundamental branches of philosophy, and then how politics, it's only the fourth branch in concession after the metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and then we arrive at politics. So by the time we arrive at politics, if we don't have the fundamentals validated and correctly identified, then there will be a missing connection between the application and what exactly are we applying. So if you're interested in that, I can devote more time when you have devoted more time to it, since we kind of don't have the time for it to explore it. It's very very complex, but I appreciate the short version of your example of what could be bad or good. For example, the way you explicated, I appreciate that, but I just disagree with some of the logic of it.
Yeah,
um, But what I'm interested in is in which I find very valuable, because that's what uh, part of my work is dedicated to, is the one in the many, is the awakening of the process of integration, which is a conscious process that um, alleviates the burden of energy allocation. So when you're conscious, you need a lot of energy physiologically, right? Your brain
mm,
consumes the most energy in your body proportionately. Um, it's exhausting to be constantly conscious. So we have to have another mechanism for our well-being, and that is the subconscious. So we have to consciously structure our subconscious, which is the more reactive, automatized, momentary um, interpretation of our past experiences that we have integrated consciously. And so, in that way, we don't have to spend a lot of time on evaluating the way I walk on the street. I just walk. It was hard when I was 1 year old, when I was learning how to walk. It was difficult. I was falling all the time. But now it's not a problem. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to spend time and energy on the process. I just do it. And to get to that level, you have to be conscious. You have to feel it, right? You have 7 children. I'm sure it was a lot of fun watching them start walking and falling and constantly finding their balance. And when they really stabilize, it's a smile on your face. They can walk now. Um, so in that respect, I really appreciate your focus on the feeling of the body. On I'm also very big on proprioception. That we have lost that connection. In the East, not so much. People in the East are much more cognizant of their bodies, and they have much richer tradition of meditation. But in the West, that's not the case. In the West, it's very difficult to get people to meditate. And through meditation, we learn what we feel, how we feel it, and how we get dis- distracted all the time. And maintaining that focus um, and appreciating the disruption, I think, to me, is a very spiritual experience. So I wanted to connect that, since we don't have that much time left, but I wanted to connect that to how does this process of being aware of your focus and sustaining the focus, how does that relate to managing stress, and how does stress arises as a disruptor to that focus process?
Yeah, so first let's define what stress is. Stress is experiencing unpleasant feelings, and that's one of the main definitions of the HeartMath Institute. So whenever you, because most people are not aware even what stress is, so it's experiencing an unpleasant feeling: anger, irritation, frustration, grief, sadness, boredom. And what happens is that your heart is electromagnetically 5,000 times stronger than your brain. And for example, let's say I experience frustration, then immediately there will be a disbalance between the accelerator and the brake of my autonomic nervous system, the so-called sympathetic and parasympathetic branches, and my heart rhythm becomes very incoherent. And there's the pressure wave from the heart, which travels from with the arteries through every part of the body. So every cell receives this incoherent pattern. The good news is once you can transform that into a positive flow, for example, contentment, enthusiasm, gratitude, love, your heart rhythm instantly becomes when you, for example, feel gratitude for something. And let's say you're sitting in a nice cafe with a nice cappuccino, newspaper, there's some beautiful music, it's a really, really nice design, and people having a good time, and you feel this joy and your gratefulness. When you experience that, your heart becomes very coherent and it travels also through every system. And but you can also deliberately get this feeling by what we call heart focused breathing. When you breathe through the heart, like 4 or 5 seconds in, and as if you're breathing out to the heart, and then activate a positive feeling, for example, gratitude. And you can shift very easily. And usually I do it with laptops, for example, in big companies. They put down 12 laptops, and then they shift from the to the heart. And that's what I mean by the heart, and also what I was saying about these leaders, because I really mean it, and I've observed it a lot. Those people are not in the heart. When they were, they will not kill so many people, because that's just something not of the heart. Your heart has a very big time. Only when it's in very big trouble, utter defenseless, then it would kill. Because and then even to serve a higher purpose. All other cases are not from the heart, and I want to be very, very specific in that. So that's what I meant with the earliest possible. So traveling to the heart, living from the heart, and also use your heart as an inner navigation system, your inner Google Map, so to say. Then it's very powerful. When you really, what the Japanese call living your ikigai, is that you really live your reason for being. And that means very practical, that you do something that you love. But that's already where so many things go wrong, because so many people just go for the work which they really don't love. They don't do it from the heart, or they are not able to do it from the heart because you have to pay the rent. And then the second point is you have to become very good in what you love, but that will happen automatically. Then the third one is that you must be able to be paid for it, otherwise you cannot pay your rent. And the fourth one is that you do something that the world needs. And then it means that you will never have to work again, which does not mean that you don't have to make effort, but it doesn't feel like effort. And everybody has a unique ikigai. And so, if leaders also learn to operate from this ikigai, instantly our Earth will raise like 3 octaves in frequency. We will, like the Hawkins scale says, the lowest frequencies are guilt, fear, shame, and anger. And so that's where most of Earth operates now because of this bad leadership. And so when we transition, anger is kind of on the cusp. And then every positive feeling, and then the highest one is gratefulness. And so that's one of the highest frequency which you can measure in a human being. And that will, and the more people do that, you only need the square root of 1%, according to the Transcendental Meditation group, the Maharishi Yoga did a lot of scientific research. So let's say you have 1,600 people, 1% is 16. The square root of that is 4. So out of 1,600 people, you only need 4 people which have a high heart frequency to have a positive effect on the whole group. So let's translate that to Earth. And so that's really what I love to do, is that assist people and corporations and people in those corporations to live from this ikigai, from the heart, and to help each other from the heart. And so there is abundance from the heart, there is empathy from the heart, there is sympathy from the heart, there's compassion from the heart. And that's what we need much more than bullies at this time on our planet.
Yeah. So, um, in Aikido, the founder of Aikido had this similar focus, like that the practice of Aikido is not so much becoming efficient, defeating your opponent, and the practice of Aikido's goal is to perfect yourself, is to achieve oneness with the universe.
Beautiful.
Right. So to do that, you have to become very good swordsman. You have to become
Hmm.
very good with the knife. You have to become very good with the staff. You have to become very good with, without weapons, fighting just with your hands and feet and body, which means you have to feel the energy of the opponent. You have to blend with the energy of the opponent. And Aikido is in his formulation and founding was designed to fight not one opponent, but many.
Hmm.
So, in a way, my attraction to Aikido, since I first developed the intellectual understanding of the process of integration, once I realized that there is a martial art that basically is the manifestation of the process of integration, and that's Aikido, is harmonizing of the energy on its path of existence. That's what each one of us does. We harmonize our energy of conscious interaction with the world, and our path of existence. And our existence is obviously limited in our physiological manifestation of existence, but we don't know about any other types of existence. At least we are not consciously aware of them. So when you are conscious, you have to really be aware of the moment. And so, from my development of the intellectual process of integration becomes very interesting because I see it as a moment of intense manifestation. And you can grade that intensity of the manifestation, whatever way it is, the way you sneeze, the way you look at someone, the way you smile, anything, has a degree of representation of that form. So you may exhibit the full form or just partial form. And um, either expression is fine as long as you understand that this is a intentional, that this is controlled expression. When it's left to um, the, the flow of the moment without your conscious awareness that this is actually what's happening, that my eyebrow is not going up, it's staying here, and I know when it's going up, when it's not going up. If you don't feel your body, if you don't know what's going on with yourself, then you lose the connection to all these nuanced interactions. So you cannot develop real density of the experiences in order to intensely express that density. And so it's like if you are fighting with a sword, you're fighting with a wooden sword instead of something that has been created from 10,000 repetitions of molding the metal and working on the metal, something very, very strong and dense. So um, any practice like you're doing it, um, which Aikido demands a constant awareness, constant meditation in motion, constant um, understanding of the degree of your expression of the form that you are trying to express. So it's not required that you achieve perfection in the form, but it is required to be at peace with your oneness of that expression with that form. In other words, Michael Jordan is a singular talent developed in his career. He's um, allegedly or arguably the best basketball player out there, right? In history, for example. Now, anybody less than him who is interested in the same activity, it will seem as an inspiration and it can become their aspiration to achieve that kind of level of expression of the form that he manifests. But we may not individually have the capacity to reach the level that he offers to us as an exhibition. That doesn't diminish the quality of our experience as less capable of fulfilling the form of that we witness in his expression, so long as I'm at peace with my ability to um, harmonize the energy that I'm experiencing to the form, to the extent of the form that I'm creating and experiencing, and that should be enough, right? And if I have the understanding that we all have different degrees of that experience of form, although in my left brain, to use your descriptions, I may have an idea that this is the optimal, this is the ideal form that I want to show. And then on the other hand, I may have shown a form and think that it's like the ideal, that it's the best I can do, but it didn't feel right. And then I can go back and work more to achieve my understanding and interpretation of ideal. Now, if I see that everybody has some kind of a process like this, that they have a whole, they hold an ideal and they go for it, and they realize that they may not be efficient enough to achieve it ever, but they're at peace with the degree of development that they've achieved, then there's no force to compel me that I must get to the ideal. In other words, my ideal could be reached at a much less plateau of achievement than somebody else's level of achievement. And that should be okay. But I think what you are alluding to in the leadership role and everything else is that people have this idea that this must be done in this way and that's it. It's an absolute. It's like if you don't get it done in that way, there's a war, there's a conflict, and there's stress, um, which doesn't have to be necessarily true.
Yeah, yeah, of course. That's I understand what you mean. Generally, it also has to do with values. Like you have this system of spiral dynamics. Like value could be survival, and then, for example, in spiral dynamics, one of the next ones is power. And that your value system is around power. They call that the red color. And then the next evolution might be order, structure, and order. And like most religions, I have a blue value system. And like everything is ordered, rules, dogmas. And then the green one is doing it together. And then the yellow next value system is like being very ideological. And so values develop, and you can have different leaders with different value systems. And that's a little bit the problem now, that we have a lot of leaders with a red value system. Whereas the earth needs more like yellow, really visionary solutions. Like also the difference between a manager and a leader. Let's say people go in the forest to have as much wood as they can, and then a manager starts to efficiently saw some trees, but a good leader looks around and says, "Hey, that tree is the largest tree. Let's climb in it." And he climbs in the tree, and you see, "Hey, there are the most trees." So he said, "Let's go there." It's less effort. It's much more vision. and there is no vision, because it's from power, from the red value system. And that's actually, and it slowly, but I think it's still needed because it's the reality. And I always say God is reality. So it obviously is the reality, but it's also a reality that we may express that we have enough of this system, and that we really want to progress further with the earth to another value system, and let's say more to green together, or yellow, or even turquoise, which is a much more spiritual, holistic point of viewing to life. And then you don't need so much people, which will guide the way already, therefore, and really pull them out. And that needs a lot of guts, because living from the heart is not soft. You need a very, very much big guts to live from the heart. And let's say you feel you have to change jobs. It's courageous to do it, to follow your heart and become a pianist, for example, or a singer songwriter, if that was your passion and you were a bookkeeper before that. Nothing wrong with bookkeeper, but if your passion was singing, then it really takes a lot of guts to follow your heart. And generally, your heart, listen to your heart. It will always find a good place for you. It's not easy, and I think that's the transition we are kind of in now. Like maybe other people would say to go from the third dimension more to the fourth or fifth dimension. It's only a way of speaking.
So I have to disagree with you on that one too. But on this one, I'd like to talk about my disagreement. So when I was 23 or 24-year old, I came to crossroads in my life, and I did a 180-degree turn. Now, everybody around me had the same perception as you did, or just expressed that this is very hard to do. How did you do it? How do you do it? How can you sustain this change? So for 23 years, I thought of this is the absolute. And then I flipped it around 180 degree, complete opposite. And I said, no, this is what I need to follow. And it was the easiest decision in my life. It required no courage. All it did was I felt, in your terminology, my heart. In other words, if I use your analogy, my heart told me this is your only path. There's no courage needed. This, if you want to live on, this is how you're going to live on.
But generally, it does mean. I coach so many people for the most.
Everybody else conceives it or perceives it as courage. The person doing it is his natural expression of life.
Of course, I do agree with that. But what I mean is, most people, which I have coached throughout the years, and when they embark for their heart, they really have to come over thresholds. For myself, I was working with Accenture, and what I just told. My father was director of PricewaterhouseCoopers here in the Netherlands. He thought, okay, his son is also becoming like a partner, and but I changed my heart because I went on the spiritual path. That was hard because you have to fight a certain system. Even your own dad is opposing you. That's courage. It needs courage to fight that, for example, or to maybe I didn't have this nice car anymore to let go of that, or maybe and no do not value like the compliments of other people. So it takes courage to move another to another thing. Now we moved from Spain with 7 children to the Philippines. I can tell you that needs courage.
Now
Of
that
all
part I
the
agree. So
yeah,
so
but
so
it's
so, so
generally following,
that decision making to move from one place to another, especially with 7 children, even by yourself, even if you are not married or anything, just to move from one place to another, that takes courage. That takes guts, because you um, changing location. But spiritually, you already changed. You have no choice but to live yourself, to live as you are. Maybe
sure.
you were something else yesterday, but today you're something different. And you will exist on as that different thing. Now, that different thing may exist in Spain, in Philippines, in Netherlands, in New York, any way it wants to. But it must exist somewhere, somehow. So the first part, I don't see it as a courage. The first part I see it as the transmutation, as the transformation. Something inspired the change. The change occurred. Now that has changed, everybody else is astonished. How can you do that, right? I mean, similarly to you, I had to find family, society, everybody around me was against what I did.
Yeah.
And yet I was in the right.
Of course, and I'm happy that it was a quite good, smooth transition for you. But I'm only talking about my experience of 20-year coaching people in this area. And one of the biggest obstacles most people find in themselves is, for example, financial. And so they have a certain job which they don't really love, but they can't pay the mortgage and the rent. And then, yeah, they would like to have maybe become like an adventurist and guide people in the mountains, let's say. But they can earn maybe just enough to buy groceries and pay a little bit of the rent. So that could be a challenge. So then they really have to wrap their head around it. They must make a plan. They must design their life. I call it designing your life. That takes guts. It's fun to do. Right? That's because it's your heart. Right? So your heart carries you. Absolutely, because your heart wants it. Right? So you are motivated. You have passion. In that way, it feels effortless. But still, you have to do the steps. And then your mind kicks in, and this, and this, and this, and that. So you have to also transition your mind in it. And then you can design your life. What do I want with my financial life? What do I want with my emotional life, with my intellectual life, with my love relationship, with my parenting? What do I want? What experience do I still want to have? That's all from the heart, designing your life. I suppose everything is designed around us. And the chair you are sitting in, the mic you're talking in. So most people are not aware that you also can design your life from the heart, and then slowly but
Right.
steadily manifest from it. And that's generally because when you do live from the heart, it will be effortless in the end. But the journey can also bring obstacles. I just saw the film The Odyssey,
Oh, how
where
was it?
I really loved it, and that's of
Oh,
course
good.
also the
Excellent.
story of a man turning back home. It's maybe a
Yes.
metaphor for the heart, but he really had to overcome many obstacles to do that. And
Right.
of course, it would be very nice, and I really love when it's very effortless for people, and there are. And I'm very happy to hear that this transition for you was kind of effortless. That's beautiful.
Oh, no, no, no. So you characterize it as effortless, but I would say that it's effortful.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the thing that it's not a question of courage or anything else is the metaphysical transformation in your relationship with the world. That you understand that until yesterday you thought that the world is white, and today you understand that the world is black. So you have to shift from one universe to another. It's completely different world view. And when you do that and you see that you cannot go back to the old ways, that you can only see in this new through this new prism or glasses or new
Mm-hmm.
horizon that you open up for
Yeah.
yourself, then you feel in your natural habitat. And so it's natural, but it's full of effort.
Okay.
Everything is
I
effortful.
understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's your natural habitat now. It's not
Mm.
my father's, it's not my teachers, it's not my corporations.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
mine.
Mm.
I want it. That doesn't mean that I cannot have the same experience within PCW or any other corporation, right? I worked for UBS, so you can experience that natural environment in a highly structured corporation so long as you focus on developing the competence at the level of spirituality. If you take every process of work that you do as a spiritual task, then you get fulfilled. But if you do it with a drag, with um, under dictation, if you haven't internalized it, if you haven't adapted it as your own natural habitat of function, and you don't feel it through your heart or body, then you better change. And
Hmm.
that I understand that people have a huge problem with.
Sure. Yeah. I understand. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Daniel, we are almost out of time, but I enjoyed my conversation with you. And as you pointed out, green is the color of togetherness. We just met. You're wearing green. I'm wearing green.
Oh yes, indeed.
Of course. You have to see sometimes with the left side of your brain, not only with the right side.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
So I would love to do it again because I think there are many areas that we can dive deep on the fundamental level of how we explain spirituality in a way that it's become the natural breathing ground for life
Hmm.
in a man who feels arrested in an artificial environment.
Sure.
So I think that could be interesting inquiry.
Absolutely, and yeah, I loved also much this dialogue, and yeah, of course, would be very interesting to deepen and to exchange further ideas on that topic you just mentioned.
Great. Well, thank you for joining me again. Great meeting you. And until next time, may you integrate your life with value driven days.
Vice versa. Thanks so much.